I'm going to do a standing meditation today instead of a crouching one. So, I welcome you here. I want to thank Fox and her friends. Fox and Fox and her tribe, Fox and her family, for the Yule circle that we had at 9:30 this morning. It was amazing. We had, 30, 40 people or something in it. Some of them stuck around. And do a meditation here in a moment, but I have one other item of interest, I think, perhaps to you. We had a guest musician here several weeks ago named Bob Livingston. You remember Bob? Bob's been here quite often. Yesterday at Bush Intercontinental Airport, Ethiopian Airlines inaugurated direct non-stop flights from Houston to Addis Ababa, and they arranged for the first incoming flight of Ethiopians disembarking to be greeted at the terminal by Bob Livingston, playing guitar and singing to them.
Oh, that's nice.
So,
That's great. That's good.
way to go, Bob.
Yeah.
All right, I just invite you to relax into this beautiful day, and let's just settle in and catch up with ourselves. It's been quite a busy time, I'm sure, in your life. And even if all of this convergence of holidays occurring right at this time, even if you observed none of these, you'd still be sitting in the traffic. So it's been a time. And the year is winding down. And there's business to attend to for that as well. And always the resolutions, the plans, the hopes, the dreams of the new dawning year, these are pulling at you too. And so it's nice to have a place, isn't it, where you can come and just be. And the expectations are few to none. You don't have to sing. You don't have to hug. You can just sit and be within yourself unless you feel like extending yourself. You are at choice. And in this time, with no demands placed on you, a sense of well-being is free to come over you. It actually emerges from within you, from the center of your chest, a sense that there is one life, one power, one presence. That one is Spirit, God, Goddess, whatever you think of it as being. The point is, it's thought of you as being, and that's why you are. There is one. And so every other expression of life you might ever encounter is of that one as well. No matter how they seem, how unusual, how unlike you, even if they lived on other planets on the other side of the Milky Way, which for all we know they may, they're still right at the center of that same one life as you. And in that life, all the attributes of that life are present. All the peace and the harmony and the love and the abundance and the creativity and more love. In fact, love is really the name that issues all names from it. Know this, and you're well equipped for this time or any time, this year or any year, that there is one life. That life is your life, unmistakably and unendingly. So I invite you to be with your thoughts, your feelings, your sweet inner process, whatever that may be, on this beautiful, beautiful first full day of winter Sunday morning, as we sit together for a few moments in the beauty of this music. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. I invite you now to open yourself to the miracle-working higher power and symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your right hand, letting my words act as your own for your own inner acceptance and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge.
I acknowledge.
Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems, while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I become ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words, I surrender.
I surrender.
Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, now I say, I forgive.
I forgive.
Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only constructive, positive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose.
I choose.
I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week, visualizing this idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words, I accept.
I accept.
Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release.
I release.
Now in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me who's touched my life in powerful, wonderful ways. This could be a friend, a family member, a teacher of mine. It's someone who's not physically present with me in this room this morning, so I greet this being of light and consciousness, turning toward that face I see in my mind's eye and saying, I'm grateful for the good in your life.
I'm grateful for the good in your life.
Now I open my eyes to the world around me, turn joyfully to these folks here and say to each of them, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Where to begin? See, it's weird when I only have one talk on a Sunday. Normally I do two. So one of them can be good.
Take the best one. That's the other.
Well, we had the Yule celebration and talked about and experienced the idea of the return of the light. That at the solstice in the winter, in our hemisphere, we have to remember everything's reversed in the southern hemisphere, that in the hemisphere that we occupy at present, the sun now begins to rise in the sky and the days get longer and so on. And so much is made of this as a metaphor. It's useful to us as a metaphor. Anymore, it's like mostly useful to us as a metaphor because, as Joe pointed out, we built these things around the agricultural cycle, but it's a cycle that most of us don't observe that closely anymore because we don't have to. We live indoors and so on, and things are made for us and built for us and all. But the metaphorical value of these seasonal changes is profound and everlasting. And so we look for the return of the light. But what I want to do this morning is argue a little bit for the darkness. No, you just sit tight. 25 minutes from now, you'll thank me for this. Because darkness has a bad reputation that is unwarranted. unwarranted. The darkness gives context to the light. Therefore, it is of value. And it's of value on its own merits as well. And by darkness, I don't mean evil.
No.
Just as by light, I don't mean goodness. Because those are moral values. And they're also very shaky and very subjective. And they change in agreement from culture to culture. No, I'm talking about the darkness of, more a literal darkness of you can't see, or your senses don't register. When your senses don't register, you fly by instruments. Meaning you work from your inner compass, your inner place, your inner voice. When you are in the darkness, the imagination kicks in. Have you seen, and I've been advocating this to people in classes and whatnot, have you watched any of Ken Burns' series on country music?
No.
I gather that we're not like a really country music heavy spiritual center,
No.
because I bring that up. And, I'm telling you, it's wonderful. If you love any kind of music, you learn so much. You learn about the culture and all of these different energies and how the music came to be and informed what we listen to today. But one of the things I learned back in that is the power of radio, which I had forgotten because when I was a kid, TV had already come along. We didn't have a color TV, we had a black and white one, but still it was TV, you know. And the older folks would say, well, you know, we used to just listen to the radio. And I thought, God, how mind-numbingly dull that must have been. But then you talk to people today, and do you have a smartphone? Do you have a this or this? You know, no, I just watch TV. God, how mind-numbingly dull that must. So it always changes. But what they were saying about radio is, in radio, you had to use your imagination. And so a story would be told, and they'd use sound effects if it was like a mystery or something, and you'd hear creaky doors and thunder, you know, and you had to picture this. And I was thinking about, have you seen Cats, the movie, yet? No. A lot of people haven't, apparently. But I want to. I saw the musical. I've seen the musical on stage twice. But before I ever saw it, I don't know why, I had the Cast album.
What?
Yeah.
You know, the album, the record album?
You do?
Large round things with little holes in them. I listened to the Cast album, and I imagined what the stage show would look like. And then when I got to the stage production, it didn't look like that. It looked better, actually, than what I could have come up with. As a matter of fact, you know, if you went to it ever, you'd be sitting there, and suddenly at your arm there'd be a cat. An actor in a cat outfit, you know. Well, this is how imagination works. And imagination is a use it or lose it kind of thing. You never lose it entirely, but it gets real stale. It goes dormant. It goes into hibernation if you don't apply it. And in the darkness within is where the imagination kicks in. How would you have it be if it could be any way at all? How would you have your life look? Where do you go to answer that question? You don't go to your senses. You go to a deeper, darker, more primal place in yourself. How would I have it be? How would you know you were happy? How would you know? How would you know if someone asks you, are you happy? Is your life good? Where do you go for the answer? You don't go to objective stuff, do you? You don't count your money in front of it. You don't list all your friends, or anymore your Christmas cards. How many Christmas cards have plummeted?
Yes.
Haven't they? Used to
Yes.
pay for the house with them.
Yeah.
You know? Well, if that was a measure, if that were a measure of your actual friends, you'd be very sad. Just like if Facebook friends were a measure of your actual friends. And then you went to count your real friends, and it's like, but I have thousands of them, but they all melted into nothing, you know? So we don't go to objective stuff for how we feel and what really counts and how our lives are working. We go to the subjective within, in the darkness, in the stillness, in the silence, in the peace, You go in there. And in the darkness, just like when you close your eyes. If you were to do it now, or in a darkened room, you close your eyes, and you see little patterns. There's a word for those, and I forget what it's called, but it's the firing of the nerves behind the eyes. And you see kind of a little pattern of stuff there, little dancing lights, you know. And it's perfectly natural. Your eyesight is not impaired or anything. It's just there, you know. And you see this, and if you sit there and you can meditate on these things, and this is what you do: is you pull down the shades, you see, and you look at the back of your eyelids, and it's like, whoa! You wait for the show to start, and patterns emerge. Patterns emerge. Patterns emerge in the darkness. Patterns emerge in the shadow. Let's talk about the shadow. The shadow has as bad a reputation as the darkness does. They both sound kind of creepy and alien. Jung talked about the shadow a great deal, and his work, which is very complicated and nuanced, has been often depicted as just, well, your shadow side is like this monstrous part of you that can't be shown to the world, or everyone would recoil. It's your Beauty and the Beast, your Jekyll and Hyde, what have you. No, it's more complicated than that. It's more beautiful than that. The shadow part of you is simply the part of you that's not out in front right now. It's the part of you that's not leading the parade. It's the part of you that's backing up what's leading the parade. We might think of it as motives that are seeking their fruition. You know, you have a motive, you have an intention, and you set it out into the world. And you set it to the hunt. Joe was telling us about the wild hunt at 9:30. You send it out to hunt. Go find me what I need. And you forget you did that. And you forget what you asked it to do in the first place, or how you would know what you wanted when it retrieved it and brought it back to you. You and I set a lot of causes in motion that we're oblivious to. The shadow part of us is what launched those things, and now it has receded, and something else has stepped forward. What you wanted when you were a little kid on the playground, in the sandbox, when you were helpless and small, still drives an awful lot of your impulses today. But we've forgotten that, because we're all growed up. You know? We're all, and we're groomed, and we're dressed for success, and we're poised for action, and we set out there into the world, and you get around other people, and you're still competing for affection and attention and approval, and you don't like that about yourself, and so you have to look even more grown up and more this, because it's the little kid in you that felt like she or he didn't get what they needed 50, 80 years ago, that's still not satisfied and has not been redirected. I heard a great line this week. I would credit it to the author, but I don't know who the author is. Maybe you can Google it and find out. And it says, what you're not changing, you are choosing. Whoa. It's also alliterative. It has a nice approximate rhyme. What you're not changing, you're choosing. And so if we're not changing the initial impulses that steered us in a certain direction, then we're still run by that. And I know people who are really advanced in earth years, who still, if you push the right buttons, will be little kids. Because they still haven't scratched that itch, so to speak, within themselves. This is not a bad thing. It's just a life's journey. It's just a learning thing that we go through. Consciousness, which is what we teach in this place, is not about, it's not a one-way street into enlightenment. You know, consciousness is complicated too. Consciousness is an intersection of a lot of different roundabouts and such. You could imagine, how do you have an intersection of roundabouts? I don't know, but it's consciousness. You can do anything. It's more like a labyrinth than a maze. A maze defeats you. A labyrinth eventually gets you there, but you have to go through some twists and turns, you know. Well, that's how consciousness is, and what consciousness wants of you, and what spirit wants of you, God, the deity, wants of you. More than anything else, I believe. Not your adoration, though we adore at this time. Come, let us adore him. And your worship and your this and your gifts and your little drummer song and all the rest of that. More than that, more what it wants from you is for you to know who you are. Because when you know who you are, you know what it is. And then you can satisfactorily stand in the deity and say, I am that I am. Know what makes you tick. That's why this is a science of spiritual psychology. Now, I know that's not a real Christmassy kind of thing to say, but it sets the table for it. Because when the light comes, which we're going to talk about Tuesday night, and I hope you'll join us then. We've got a spectacular program planned for you at our one Christmas Eve service, 7 o'clock Tuesday. When the light comes, if you've done your work in the darkness, you're ready for it. You're ready for it. You're ready to follow where it leads. The way the Magi did, we're told, which is another metaphor, you know, they dropped everything and went. And these guys had countries to run. I mean, we're told. They're kings. Or they were, well, sages, wizards, sorcerers, what have you. They had business to do. They were busy people, like you're busy. What gets you here? You know, I think every Sunday, and other times too, but every Sunday when you show up here and you sit through one of these services, I think to myself, how honored I am, and all of us are, that you're here. Because of all of the other things you could do. You got stuff to do, man. You got to work tomorrow. You got laundry to do.
Yeah.
You know, you got cooking to do. You probably have people coming in next week. But you're here doing this work, which tells me that not only is it nice for the center and all of this, but it tells me that something in you voted at a very deep level to do the deep work. To do the deep work. To go into the dark and find what is there. What makes you tick? What motivates you? What drives you? What is your passion? Why do you do what you do? And what changes do you choose to make? And what choices do you choose to make as you go through this process? Only you know, and they'll be perfect for you. And if you start to make some and they don't work out, you can make some other ones. But you'll find they do work out. Don't be too hasty to judge. People will say, well, I prayed affirmatively. I treated, as we call it, believing, and nothing happened. And while they're telling you that nothing happened, behind them, that they can't see, you see displayed like a peacock's tail all that happened for them, okay? You see the panorama of things that are different about this person and their life now. Oh, every day the same thing, but I treated. And it's like suddenly they have a peace, they have a confidence, they have a conviction that you never noticed about them before. It completely works. This work is not for cowards. The good news is there really aren't any cowards. They're just people who haven't found their power yet. But I found this in the book of Taliesin. The chief of Anwin's cauldron, who finished the rim around its edge with pearl, swore it should never cook a coward's food. Now, what in the world does that mean? You like history and literature, don't you? Here's a little more of it. This is an ancient Welsh epic. Goes back anywhere 1,000 to 1,500 years. Nobody's sure. The chief of Anwin's cauldron. The cauldron is the place where the sacred work is done. Think of the cauldron as within you where your thoughts and feelings mix. It's also a large kettle-looking thing, but mostly we're talking about the inner work. And the rim of this is finished, its edge, with pearl. Pearl is not easy to come by, especially in those days. Especially enough of it to finish the rim of a cauldron. So this is telling you attention was paid. A lot of time and no small expense went into the creation of this cauldron. And the chief of this cauldron, or the architect of it, the person who formed this thing, who forged it, you know, this place where thoughts and feelings met, swore it should never cook a coward's food. In this cauldron, no meal will be prepared for cowards. That is to say, you back away from the work, you don't get to eat. You don't get to enjoy it. You don't get the satisfaction. Your hunger is not fulfilled. You see where I'm going with this. You back away from the work, you say, today I'm not willing to take up my divine inheritance because it's large and overwhelming and intimidating. Well, then come back tomorrow. Or next week, or a month from now, or at the end of your days. And it will be waiting for you to take up. Or go ahead now. Sometime in the year to come, no matter how much you beg me not to, I'm going to take you through the hero's journey again. All of the different stages. I know. All of the different stages of the hero's journey, because it's a fascinating thing and it's your journey. And it starts with, you remember, the threshold. That's actually step 3, but the threshold and the darkness behind it. And it's you're like, no, I can't do it. I got a million, look, I'd love to, but I got to run, it's Christmas. And at some point, you go in. And then it's off to the races. And your mentor has vanished, and all recognizable landmarks are gone, and there you are. That is spirituality. One last thing about this. As we celebrate the sacred seasons, the convergence, and we've spoken of so many of them today, but I want to draw your attention, as I do every year, to the Festival of Lights, which begins tonight, called Hanukkah, in the Jewish tradition. And I learned something about Hanukkah when I took up this work. I was raised in a Jewish neighborhood. I went to a school with a great many Jewish classmates, and so I kind of thought I knew what was going on. But being young and impetuous, I focused mostly on guilt and latkes and things. But there's this, guilt is chocolate. Anyway, there's a story back of it that's powerful, which is this oil lasted in these lamps for longer, far longer than it was supposed to. So that Judas Maccabeus, the leader of the Maccabean faction of the Hebrews, might overcome in battle Antiochus and the Syrians, who had occupied the temple at Temple Square in Jerusalem, the second temple, I believe it was, in the array of temples that have stood. And the oil lasted, and this is why you light the candles of the menorah, and it symbolizes the miracle, and it symbolizes the victory of the Jewish people over their oppressors, over their would-be conquerors. That's the story I knew. And so, okay, the oil lasted so that they could fight and win. And the oil lasted so they could then party. I pictured sort of, well, this is before they dumped Gatorade over the winning coach, but it was that kind of thing. They won the battle and everybody was happy and they had a big party, and that's Hanukkah. And now you spin the dreidel and you eat the food and you give the presents and stuff. And what I discovered when I bothered to look into the story in any depth is that the light lasted not so they could party, but so they could clean. So they could clean, so they could purify the temple, so as to be able to hold their rituals there again. And that is one of the most powerful spiritual practices and powerful metaphors that I know of, especially connected to this time of year, is the fact that you're given light to work by, to do something. We do spiritual work. You and I are laborers in the vineyard, if you will. We do spiritual work here. No one can coast. See, I just wrote about this, and you can read it in the January Science of Mind. There's an unashamed plug for an article of mine. But nobody gets the title co-creator as an honorary title. It's a working title. It's a working. You want to be a co-creator? You want to co-create with the infinite? Great. Here's what you got to do. Let go of resentment, let go of grudges, forgive your enemies, bless those who persecute you. Jesus said a lot of it. He had it going on. He was a masterful spiritual psychologist, was he not? Get clear on who you are. Let go of limitations. Open yourself to grow. And spend a little time in the dark. Spend a little time with the parts of you that make you uncomfortable. You learn a lot from them. You don't like your anger? Sit your anger down next to you. Say, here, come talk to me. Why are you mad? Like you would with another human. Like you would with, I had an amazing exchange with a new friend in the circle at 9:30 this morning. Fellow I hadn't met. Fox said, go find somebody you don't know. I know most of you, so I've got to be somebody usually she brings if I don't know him. And so I met this man, and we had this wonderful exchange, and we were asked to do a process together where we exchanged certain words and concepts, and he opened up to me. I won't, of course, tell you what he said, but he opened up to me, but he doesn't know me from a bale of hay, and he opened up to me with his something that he's striving for in his life. Wow. He's doing his work. He's doing his work. And he can trust me with it. But you know what? That's not what's driving him. It's like, who can I trust with this? It's like, I got to do my work. And if somebody drops the ball for me, they haven't dropped my chances. They haven't, you know? And so you go around and you ask for the help that you need. You ask for the ideas, the incoming information. You ask it. Next time you read sacred scripture, whatever that is to you, before you open the book, don't ask it. Don't implore it. Don't be all respectful with it like you were taught to be. Nearly as much as you say to the thing, all right, I'm about to read you. Give up your secrets to me. Tell me what I need to know. I expect to find it here. Okay, Bible, take down your Bible and say, all right, I've heard there's great truth in you. Now, give it up. Show it to me. You know what? And the thing will fall open to some passage, and you will see something there that's exquisitely perfect for you right in this moment. That's the process of deep inner discovery that we are undertaking all the time, but more especially at this season. So on Tuesday night, Christmas Eve, a little bit of the metaphorical Christmas story. You'll like it. You've heard some of this before, and some of it, frankly, you haven't. Who the angels were, who the shepherds were, who were all these people, what do they all mean, and how did they all come together for this amazing event? Right now, what I invite you to do is we're going to turn within. We're going to go to that silence. We're going to go to that darkness. If it feels comfortable to you, or heck, even if it doesn't, close your eyes, would you? And look at the back of your eyelids there, and you see those little dancing lights I've told you about. And notice that there are patterns. Notice that there's a sequence there, that there's something that you could feed all of this somehow into some vast computer and come up with a numerical formula. And you could take those numbers and you could translate them into musical notes. You could translate them into pigments of color and create astonishing art. Just like you can look at clouds and see animals and faces and objects. That's the power of imagination. And imagination is everything. Imagination is freedom. It's liberation from the drudgery of sensory input, where this food tastes pretty much like other food. This situation fits, this suit of clothes fits me like pretty much every other suit of clothes. That can get tiresome. But imagination says, what if I were a cat? What if I were a tree? What if I were a cloud? What if I were you? What if I were my enemy? What if I were the person I've been trying to help but they won't let me? What if I were my own childhood? My own yesterday? And now, patterns emerge. New we've recaptured a little piece of ourselves that we had hidden at some point, forgotten at some point where we put it. But here it is, right at hand. For this sweet time, for the dark and the cold, and the light that is to come, for the undaunted spirit coming into its own, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done, and so it is.